Yo, what's going on, guys? It's G Miners here, and next season snipers are getting a universal 15% buff to their damage in PvE. Bungie also distinctly mentioned that exotic snipers that use heavy ammo will also be getting this increase in damage. So obviously Whisper and Darcy are going to be getting that buff, but I'm not entirely sure if things like Cloud Strike and then more importantly Izanagi's Burden will also receive it. Most likely not, though. Either way, right now we have a bunch of really good snipers, and next season we're bound to get another one as well. Supremacy from Last Wish is insane, with perks like 4 times the charm, rewind rounds, bait and switch, and kinetic tremors. Succession is still amazing with reconstruction and vorpal weapon, and we do also have options like the Iklos sniper, distant tumulus, Irakanji, and more. Next season, Garden of Salvation or Vault of Glass are also going to be getting craftable weapons. It just hasn't been announced yet, and both of these have rapid fire snipers, which could likely drop with some really insane perks. In Vault of Glass, Praedyth's Revenge already has some really decent perks and some solid rolls, which could end up being even better. And then Omniscient Eye also has the potential to give us something insane, which drops from Garden. Even with Ikelos and Distant Tumulus, we still don't really have an insane end-all be-all type roll where it's going to beat everything else out in the energy slot. It's usually case-by-case basis on what you use, so with craftable weapons in Garden, this would be great for things like triple weapon swaps. And then finally, the 15% increase in damage is also crazy for something like Whisper of the Worm. Whisper already has an extremely high total damage output, so the 15% increase is going to make this even better. And so in this video, on top of showcasing some of the best special snipers that you guys should be using, I also wanted to compare the damage output of Whisper to some of the top DPS options currently. Hopping straight into things, I covered in my best in-slot special weapon video that Supremacy was the best kinetic sniper in the game, and for good reason. My personal favorite perk on Supremacy is Enhanced Kinetic Tremors. With the enhanced version of this perk, you can generate a kinetic tremor in just 2 shots compared to the 3 with the non-enhanced version. This is quicker, but then it also saves a ton of ammo as well if your goal is just to kill with the kinetic tremors and not waste a bunch of extra ammo. The damage increase is also pretty solid. Even if you manage to just double body shot an enemy or a boss, you're going to be hitting twice for around 5,500 damage, and then kinetic tremors hits for almost 8,000 on 3 separate instances. So on body shots, you're effectively getting 3 times the damage. And then on crits, this comes out to roughly a 61% increase in damage, which is still super solid. So overall, I think it's a great way to get off some extra free damage, a great option for increased ad clear. It's great against champions, especially breaking shields with Radiant as well. And even if you end up just spamming this against a boss, it's still a solid 18% increase in damage for each magazine you shoot. Speaking of damage though, Supremacy also has an even better role, which is rewind rounds and bait and switch. Bait and switch is obviously 35% more damage for the weapon, which is better than kinetic tremors against bosses, and then rewind rounds drastically reduces the downtime spent reloading, further increasing your DPS. With bait and switch and just 26 shots in reserves, Supremacy can deal over 725,000 damage on its own in a relatively short period of time, which is pretty high compared to most other special weapons. The 15% increase is going to make the total damage output even better at around 840,000, and it's also going to make the kinetic tremor roll even more effective. Moving along, Succession is also an insanely good sniper, especially when used against champions and tankier enemies. But before we get onto that, let's talk about today's sponsor. For everyone who tells me it's too hard to skate in Destiny 2, I just hit 100 skate on my cell phone thanks to Backbone, which is this video's sponsor. Backbone 1 is a controller that snaps into any iPhone or Android phone and instantly turns it into a next-gen gaming device. This is great for a game like Destiny so that you guys can casually hop on to collect vendor loot if you're ever away from your PC, Xbox, or PlayStation and never miss out. Plus, if you're used to gaming on controller, you can easily take this in game on the go or play anywhere else to just relax. Once you get your Backbone, open the box and remove the controller, which stretches to fit any phone size. From there, you get your smartphone, attach the controller, and make sure the USB-C connection snaps into your phone, and you're done. Backbone also has an insanely intuitive app. It acts as a hub for everything, so you can launch Steam, Xbox, and PlayStation games, along with any other games that you guys might have on your phone. Just press this orange button to launch the app and have access to everything in the palm of your hand. I was able to launch up Destiny 2 and start playing in less than a minute, and the gameplay you're seeing now is 1080p by 60 FPS. Backbone comes with its own recording method with the press of a button, which makes it super simple. It also has hot swappable pads, so you can easily use this even when you're using a case on your phone. You guys can head over to backbone.com to get your Backbone 1 controller today, or use the link in my description below. Now back to Succession, and the main reason that I think this buff will also be great for Succession is because it is the best in class aggressive sniper. I think it was back in season 18 when we had anti-barrier sniper last, and Succession was great for this, especially in GMs. In general, back then, it had a low chance to one-shot an anti-barrier shield. I think you had to actually crit the anti-barrier while its shield was up, and even then, I don't know if it would always break the shield in one shot, but with the 15% increase, this should make it great for GMs in the future. The major downside is that we obviously don't always have anti-barrier sniper, but even with Radiant, this should be insane for a lot of different areas in the game. The ability to shoot through shields makes it even stronger, and in activities where it's super close to one-shotting certain enemy types, I think that 15% increase will make it a lot more viable as a utility-based weapon that can be used to kill tankier enemies at ranges in 1 or 2 shots. Lastly, the most major change really comes down to Whisper of the Worm's total damage output with the 15%. So just to compare it to some other top options, for sustained DPS, linears are great, but I think Levy's Breath has been much more useful in recent seasons. Against bosses, Levy's Breath is going to be hitting for 96,000 damage each shot, and with a max reserve size of 15 shots, that comes to 1.4 million damage. Apex with bait and switch, which is much more for like burst DPS with still really good total damage output, comes to 128,000 damage each rocket. If you add wolf packs on top of that, it's going to add another 44,000 damage. So in total, that comes to 172,000 damage per rocket you shoot, assuming that all those wolf packs hit. So with max reserve sitting at 9 total rockets, that is 1.5 million damage. And then Whisper, as it stands with Whispered Breathing applied, hits for 50,000 each and every shot. Also keep in mind with the intrinsic triple tap that it has, that means at a max reserve size with 24 shots, we really can get off 35 shots if each crit hits. So in total, Whisper is better than anything else at almost 1.8 million damage. Then with the 15% applied on top of that for next season, Whisper will then be capping out at just over 2 million damage, which is right under where linears were at their peak. Now realistically, Whisper won't beat out something like Rockets, even with the 15% in their burst damage potential. Rockets just do an insane amount of DPS until they end up falling off because you run out of ammo, but as you're going to see next season, it should beat out Levy's Breath. Just testing the time it takes to mag dump against Kali here, Levy's Breath can fire its full 15 shots in 20.22 seconds. That comes to 1.44 million damage, which is around 71.2 thousand damage per second. This is really good for total damage output and DPS when you also factor into account how easy Levy's Breath is to use. Also keep in mind this was with a Luna Well because you kind of need that for Levy's to be optimal. Comparing that to Whisper, we were able to get off 31 shots, which wasn't even the full reserves in 24.3 seconds. In the current season, that would have been 1.56 million damage and 64.5 thousand damage per second, which is a lot better than I think people realize. However, with that 15% applied, this jumps all the way up to 74.1 thousand damage per second, which beats out Levy's Breath in terms of DPS and will absolutely smoke it in terms of total damage output, while also still having ammo left over. So I think with the 15% increase, snipers are looking to be much better than they've ever been since they dominated in Forsaken. I still think there are some other factors that come into play with Whisper, and I don't think the 15% is going to make it meta, but I think it puts it in the conversation. Let me know your thoughts on snipers going into next season, along with all the changes listed in today's TWAB. As always, have a good one, guys. Peace.